A few days later, Lucy has only been here for a few days, so surely it won't lead to anything. But of course, that was just a complacent thought. It jumps to a joint combat training quest with a ring and students cheering. It's a mock one-on-one combat exercise to minimize lethality. Students use fake weapons, which will of course have the most important people in the game being put on the stage, and even the protagonist, who is the failed swordmaster, Taylor. Ed looks excited, wondering if his match is next. He says he knows the results, so he wasn't paying attention too much since the winners are first-year students like Taylor, except for Yunuka, who tries to talk to Ed again, who says he can't believe she's so nice even after he asked her for money. He says if Lucy is like a cat, Yunuka is closer to a dog. He tells her he doesn't care for the matches, and she asks, what about his? He then starts to sweat nervously, asking if he has to fight. He says Ed would be expelled by now, so who is he even going to fight? Taylor gets on stage, saying he will perform to the best of his abilities. Ed says he just needs to focus on watching the match, since, even if it was from a screen, he lived as Taylor for so long. From the miserable endings to the true endings, he was there for it all. He did it countless times, there wasn't a single route that wasn't arduous and difficult. So he's cheering Taylor on to his fullest ability. Then the announcement asks for Lucy to appear on stage, and he wonders where the hell she went. He spots her feet sticking out while she sleeps, and he yells, telling her to finish the duel first. It's Taylor fighting Lucy, and while Taylor has never held a sword before in his life, the first swing he does cuts through Lucy's lightning magic, which caught her off guard. He took the chance to close the gap, so she shot out another lightning spell, which overpowered Taylor. But Lucy gets disqualified for using intermediate magic, making Taylor the first one to defeat Lucy. It was such a cool scene in the game. He watches as the match is finally underway, and Taylor charges in to just instantly be deleted by Lucy. Taylor is knocked out, and Ed is completely silent. Lucy yawns, and the other students say nobody expected him to beat the top of the class, after all. Taylor's life was always full of trials. He was a country bumpkin and a failure of a student. He hadn't gotten a single decent grade since starting. He was a failure, unacknowledged by anyone. We see Taylor slowly standing back up as Ed says he's never lost hope ever. And he cheers him on in his head. Taylor charges back into Lucy, and as he gets close, Ed says now she'll use lightning magic, but he's surprised when he sees that she doesn't. She blocks Taylor's weapon with a wind spell, and he tries to break through it, but a beast made of wind roars at him, knocking him out of the stage and into the wall past Ed. Brother's face is implanted into that shit, then falls down. Ed says this isn't how it was meant to happen. Lucy is declared the winner, and Taylor looks defeated. Ed is surprised since Taylor wasn't meant to lose. Ed watches Taylor walk away and says this is a big problem. He cannot leave him alone. The magic used is due to forming a contract with Murelda. She approaches Ed, asking if he'll give her jerky. He ignores her, and Phinia tries to talk to him too, but he ignores her as well, which surprises her since he looks pissed. He calls out to Taylor, saying he doesn't know if this will matter, but it's better than just sitting still. Taylor stops walking, and Ed tells him not to give up on his efforts. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. He tells Taylor he did great and to be proud. It was just an unlucky matchup. He tells him not to let this get him down. He just really doesn't want to be the one to have to deal with all of the problems if Taylor isn't around. We don't get to see what Taylor said. If anything, instead, the Emperor, Clow, is telling Phinia she's got God's blessing, though her ability wasn't given by God. But rather, as we know, it's something developed from how she lived her life, which is how she's so confident. The rest of the imperial family looked up to Phinia, though it was empty remarks. She pretended not to know about it. We see Ed telling her to go easy on him, and she says the same thing to him. Some students mention how Ed was yelling at Taylor. One of them asks why he's making fun of someone who got bodied. Another suggests he's just trying to seem like a nice guy by cheering him on. Phinia says they are right about how Ed acts. In the past, he was definitely someone who was shameless, but there's got to be more to him now, since earlier, that was desperation when he was shouting to Taylor, and his words were all the truth. The match is called to start, and Phinia says his actions confuse her. She says she'll come to a conclusion with this duel and starts to cast magic. He says she'll shoot this as a test and launches an aqua ball at him. She wonders how he'll react and watches intently, but he doesn't do anything. And she's lost by this. He falls to the floor and says he lost. She starts to panic and says she watched him track the trajectory. The students watching begin to laugh, saying he's worse than Taylor, and it's a joke he got one hit. Ed tells Phinia he learned a lot, and she asks what he's planning. Then she realizes he's not even made contact with her a single time. She's declared the winner. She realizes he had no interest in the duel, and that's because Ed doesn't think there's any reason to. He needs to focus on making sure the story doesn't get changed, since Phineas is important to the story. But Taylor, the protagonist of the world, is arguably more important. He looks around, trying to figure out where he is. And Phineas calls out to him. He sees her panting, and he asks what she's doing here. She barks at him, saying that's her question. And he says he learned a lot from the duel. She chews him out, saying, "My ass." He didn't even intend to win, and he just wanted off the stage fast. She says she's already having a hard time with the fox-like merchant, she means Laurel, and how Glast is just a pile of grumpiness. All of this, and the servants won't shut up about living like a noble. She has enough to deal with, so why is he complicating her mind even more? He's surprised she has this much frustration. He grabs her shoulders, telling her to take a deep breath and to calm down, saying there's no need to get worked up. He guides her on breathing properly, and after a few deep breaths, she covers her face, asking what just happened. She looks flushed, saying to please forget about this. He starts to sneak off, and she says she's got a bad habit. She starts talking about how she's always trying to predict what's in people's heads, and Ed just wants to go. She says she'll ask bluntly, and that he cut his ties with his family since he knows about their dark side, right? The reason he picked on Taylor is because he needed a reason to be expelled. He says it's a sharp deduction, but it's mostly wrong. The dark side is correct, but he looks down and plays clueless. She says there's no way she is wrong and asks what those words he yelled at Taylor were about, asking if he never disliked him from the start. Ed says no, and he just wants to make fun of him, and since everyone hates him, he thinks cheering on Taylor would be good. She says anyone can tell he's lying and to look her in the eyes while he says it. He says he's telling the truth, and her insight detects it as a lie. He says he's telling the truth, and she starts stomping her feet. She starts to get hella mad but calms herself down, saying she can't say anything since she has no evidence. So she'll let him go, and he's been staring at the door for a while, right? He thanks her as he leaves, and he says this is the first time she's shown this side of herself, and it's his fault for being a new addition to the story. He says it may be a bit out of line, but she looks to run out, and it's important to pay attention to the complicated politics, but she should relax a bit. She shouldn't worry too much, especially while being in the academy. She's lived her entire life seeing through others, but this is the first time someone has seen through her. He begins to run, saying he's lost too much time. If Taylor gives up his comfortable life, and even the entire world might end. He finally sees him but doesn't know what to say. But we hear a woman's voice saying to stop, and it's Alia, Taylor's childhood friend. She says he's already having a hard time without him, so please don't harass Taylor. Taylor stands up, saying, "So you're still in school?" Ed sees that he's revived a fighting spirit that never falters, no matter how strong his enemy is. He sees now that while he was dueling Phineas, his biggest cheerleader Alia ran to him and consoled him. Taylor asks what business he has with him. Ed is hesitant, then says he saw he's great with the blade. Taylor wonders what he's scheming, but Ed turns around, saying he's not planning anything. He treated him like a pushover, but in reality, he doesn't need to, which relieves him since he's obviously the main character. But since Taylor is fine, that's all he needed. Taylor and Alia wonder why he's trying to act cool. He walks outside, then hears a loud sound. He looks over to see a giant fire pillar from the arena. He says everyone originally witnessed this while in their seats at the nail building as a giant fire spirit and Lortel casts some kind of ice spell, which freezes the beast. The ice starts to crack as we see Yunuka riding atop the spirit's head. She's smiling, and Ed explains how he's sure Taylor and Alia are watching this. Taylor looks surprised. He hopes Taylor is paying attention as one of his very first trials is about to start, which will be the final boss of this act, Yunuka. It cuts to her being congratulated by the students, and she thanks them while laughing. Then she looks over to see Lortel being carried out on a stretcher. She feels nothing but guilt, but the students around her won't stop saying how she's their pride. We see a whole group trying to praise her, and Ed says that Yunuka already had friends, but this incident stirred a lot of trouble for her. But it's for the better, as he won't be seeing her at the camp. 2 weeks later, he says without having to worry about the main characters, he could focus on survival, so he made a fishing net, and we see that his stats have increased a lot too, or he just wanted to flex. He steps out of the river, and we see Yunuka trying not to stare. She asks if he enjoys being naked. He asks what the hell she's doing here and why she keeps coming back. She says it's like a top-secret base, so it makes her excited. Also, she wanted to talk to him more, and she needed some advice. He asks what it is. She says he left early, so he might not have seen it, but at the combat training a few weeks ago, she hurt Lortel. He recalls that Lortel should have used intermediate magic, but it wouldn't be important for Yunuka to know. She says she keeps trying to forget the incident, but she can't help but think she overreacted. She asks if she should apologize, but her friends won't stop saying Lortel was in the wrong. Ed says to apologize if she thinks she's right. He explains how Yunuka is lovely and kind to everyone, so if she ever felt guilty or self-critical, everyone would just blindly take her side. So Yunuka probably came to him specifically because she knew he wouldn't follow suit. She stretches, saying she's glad he doesn't blindly take her side. He apologizes if it offends her. She says that's not it, she doesn't feel offended at all. She says Ed wasn't like this last year. She may be a bubbly person, but she is very observant. Even when he asked her for money, she could tell it was just him trying to chase her away. She says she finds him reassuring, she wishes everyone was more like Ed. And she laughs. The night continued. Then the next day, we see Ed walking down a hallway, saying this is hella bad. While The Failed Swordsman of Sylvania is considered a masterpiece, only a few people have seen the ending since most people get bad endings early on. If you save a girl during an ambush in a cobalt test, you'll witness the secret of the golden daughter, Lortel. Then the Detective Conan guy would kill you in another episode. If you skip partying with Alia and form a unit with Lortel, Alia will fall off a cliff and die. If you protect Lortel from the fire spirit Tarkhan that Yunuka summons, you die. We hear Lortel talking to Ed, and he says he needs to go quickly since she's nothing but bad endings. He asks how long she'll follow him, and she says she didn't think he'd ignore her for so long. He says of course he would, she's the fourth main heroine and the business magnate Elkin's only daughter. She smiles, saying she'd like to buy 2 hours of his time,